It's about the almighty dollar, and when it comes to gangsters, man, there's more gangsters in world governments than any crime families.
Welcome to this episode of Chattin with Staxx. I'm your host, Bill Staxx, and today I got the king of Connecticut, Matt Granahan. What's up, man?
What's going on, brother? Glad to be here. The pernicious purveyor of preposterous pomposity, the paragon of pugilistic punditry here on Chattin with Staxx. It's great to be here, brother, with a fellow Connecticut guy.
Yeah, appreciate you, man. I've been following you for quite a bit. You have quite the reputation out here in Connecticut.
I love it. I'm supposed to be going back. I'm waiting for the athletic director from Norwalk High. We got the coach there now, Charlie Vlado, because Spiro Papakosmos, the Golden Greek, he contacted me last year to come up there to headline another fundraiser. We had done one years ago, but he needed a new heart. Spiro had was on the brink of death last time when I was up there, man. He's a legend of Connecticut wrestling. He's in the top 5 for total wins from Norwalk Wrestling, and he had me kind of replace him at headlining the last show, and now he says he wants to get up there, but I don't know, man. Spiro's a great wrestler, but those Greeks in my hometown, man, they're a bunch of slumlords, and they've ruined my hometown.
So what is your hometown? Where were you born and raised?
I was born and raised in the WAC, Norwalk, Connecticut, on the Golden Sound, Strong Island Sound.
I've been out in Norwalk. I've tattooed quite a bit of people down there, and I had some crazy run-ins down there with some police officers, and
I might know him. One of my buddies out of high school that unfortunately himself was a cop there. The legendary Kirk Kazoffel was a wild man, and he got into some trouble for, I don't want to get into what it was, but something with his wife or girlfriend. Ended up speeding down Route 7, and they got that blockade, and he just went full bore. I don't know what he was on, but R.I.P. to the great Kirk Kazoffel. I didn't think we were going to talk about him, but yeah, he was a cop in Norwalk back in the old days, back in the day.
My good friend, his name was Matt, and he was a police officer in Norwalk. He ended up getting caught with some drugs. He ended up going to rehab. We went to rehab together. It was crazy. He got caught with a girl getting fellatio in the rehab room. He got kicked out. It was crazy.
Yeah, you do some mob stuff, and I always say the quote that Phil Baroni Sr. told me. It was a Gold Star detective, the NYPD, that if you want to be a gangster, it's best to have a badge. That's how it is all over the world. The guys with the power are the ones with the badges, and I know you had my buddy Larry on, Larry Mazza. He's got a crazy story there with the whole deal with the FBI and the feds, man.
It's insane. A lot of them stories are crazy.
Yeah, man, you had a wild life too. I was watching you interviewed on you're coming up and how you got pinched a bunch of times as a really young man.
13.
Yeah. Bristol, Connecticut. I remember Bristol, of course. I think most people know Bristol from ESPN.
Yep. Yeah. And you said the hunting club you used to go to.
Yeah, right? Bristol Hunt Fish Club. My dad used to take me up there all the time, man. Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Norwalk, a good solid family there and friends. I've been out of Connecticut almost 20 years now, but it's still home to me.
Back in the day when you were growing up in Norwalk, there was a mob presence. I know you can't talk about a lot because you didn't cooperate. Like a lot of people that come on the internet, they talk about things and other people, they don't care, I guess. I don't know, but so
yeah, what I always tell people, and I had a lot of conversations with guys like Larry about this, and Frank Pontillo, a lot of the New York type guys. Is, you know, in New York they're so flashy and they're so showy with their social clubs and everything. And in Connecticut, back in the day, the '80s and the '90s, nobody really talked, you know, and you didn't really know what people were up to or who they were. And that's really the way it's supposed to be. You know, in the '90s, the Russians were, you know, in New York and throughout the tri-state were starting to take over. But I always tell people this, man, that, and it's a little controversial to say, but I always say that the largest and most powerful organized criminal organization in the world is the U.S. government.
Of course.
I mean, my God. I mean, there's no greater gangster right now than Netanyahu. He was up on embezzlement charges, people protesting in the streets, but he still keeps his power. And you talk about bodies, man. He's slaughtering tons of innocents, which disgusts me, because in the traditional Italian mob, you're really not supposed to ever hurt bystanders. Not that that doesn't sometimes happen, but
no matter what color they are, race, it doesn't matter, yeah. Right?
Well, this whole thing is all about oil, man. It just came out. It just came out yesterday about all of the oil in Gaza, and they knew that beforehand. So I mean, I do a lot of stuff with Pat Miletich, and shout out to the great Pat Miletich. We just did a video together, and Pat, like Pat says, always follow the money, man. It's never usually about religion. It's about the almighty dollar. And when it comes to gangsters, man, there's more gangsters in world governments than any crime families.
Gangsters wear suits now, man. They wear
suits.
Man.
And it's kind of always been that way. You know, I'm working for Bobby Kennedy now, Bobby Kennedy Jr. I'm a executive consultant for a super PAC, which I got into that from one of the lawyers that I work with down here. And so if you go back and you look at the Kennedy's family, you look at PJ, you know, he made a lot of his money legitimately with the bars and such, but he was also big time loan shark and had tons of loan sharks working for him. And then when you look at Joe Kennedy, you know, I put the Kennedys right up there with the Rockefellers in the U.S. I mean, they had real power. I mean, he controlled the Maritimes. And I mean, he people will say bootlegger, but he had a loophole where you could legally bring booze in to be distributed by the mob and have them working for him. So yeah, it's all about money and power. The things that people have to realize is kind of figure out where the levers of power are if you want to make money, you know?
Yeah. So when you were younger, you were bouncing, right, at a club?
I bounced a lot when I was in my youth, coming up through sports and stuff. And I had a relative who had a piece of a couple of strip clubs, and I started bouncing young. I have some great bouncing stories. The biggest fun for me back in the day bouncing was taking the girls to private parties, and that was always a lot of fun. And you know, I legally carried back then. You could legally carry when you were 18. So when you're in that kind of position with the girls, you have a lot of fun, brother. A lot of fun, especially as a young man.
I know. You know? I was DJing at a strip club last year in Minneapolis, Minnesota, right across from the Target Center. I had a lot of fun.
I love, you know, that's something that I love to do, and I want to give a shout out to one of my best friends. I've had such a bad year with friends passing, but my broadcast partner, the late great Stephen Bonner, we were at Men's Club in Charlotte. We got a chance to guest DJ and host a couple of UFC shows there, and then at another club in Spartanburg. There's a great clip of that with Summer Steele and Gina Carucci with her big juicy Carucci's up on stage with us. But I love it. I love to work the mic, man. And that's the more fun side. You know, and bouncing at a strip club is more, if you're chill, you're relaxed, you can have a lot of fun with it, you know. And I was never somebody that was yoking a lot of guys. I was more chill, and more like what does Swayze say from that old movie Roadhouse? What does he call it? A chiller or a cooler?
Tries to calm things down, de-escalate the situation, right?
Yeah, man. I mean, that's how I am and always been. And there's been clubs that I bounced at. I didn't bounce that was a long time ago. I'm getting up there in years now, man. The Silver Sage, hair's gone all white, but at least it's still there, brother. So they got the pompadour popping, man. But back in the day,
women love that, man. They love that.
um,
The silver fox.
they love the hair. But women will ask me if I color my hair. I'm like, do people color their hair gray? A lot of people do that.
Yeah,
Man.
they do.
It's wild.
Yeah.
But there was so much fun you could have as a young man, like back in the day, working in the strip clubs. It was a part of my youth that I cherished, brother. And then I got in the booze distribution side business after college, mid '90s, and did that kind of simultaneously. So I got a gig at one of the clubs that my uncle had a piece of, where I was ordering the booze and stuff through myself for like 3 different clubs. So I was getting the commission on it, and part-time managing one of the clubs. So it was a fun life, back up north, and it was different back then when it came to the gangsters. It wasn't as flashy. I mean, there were places where we knew that a lot of guys, like certain people that I knew, hung out, like the old Red Lion there on Route 7 back in the day was a famous notorious mob hangout. But it was more. It wasn't as showy as these New York guys, and people were cleaning their money, and that's one of the things. One of the things that I always say to guys like Larry and Johnny A. I say, look, you guys, New York guys, got it all wrong, man. Everyone shouldn't end up dead or in prison. If you do it right, you should be able to clean your money and live a good life, man. And that's exactly, and be into legitimate business. Maybe have some people that are working for you, like certain people I knew older than me did back in the day. But yeah, man, it's wild. So that seems to be your show. Like your show is more true crime, like my buddy Hollywood, right?
Yeah. Hollywood Wade, man. Shout out to Hollywood Wade.
He's a great fucking dude, man. I was hanging out with him in Orlando, and then in Jackson.
Right? He went to Crime Con.
Yeah. He was out there. We were hanging out at the pool, man, for that. And then I was hanging out with him up in Jacksonville, Florida, back about a month or so ago. And he wanted to get on the Baroni thing, and I just can explain that deal. So the law firm here in Florida that is in Boca Raton, I was hosting their podcast and doing their reels for their people and working in marketing, doing the reels for their lawyers. We had everybody on that podcast. It was old Evan Golden that used to host it. He was from Ivana Young Man, Ivana Trump's show, and I was just partying at their house, and they asked me to start doing that. So I was very connected working with those guys, and they're a powerful firm, man. Like, just to give you an example, like their number 3 on their executive board is the president's brother, Frank Biden. And these guys go to like $12,000 dinners routinely for Governor DeSantis. So they work both sides of the aisle. And when Phil got in trouble, Angela contacted me, his ex-wife, because Phil and I have been close for a long time. And I was able to get him to sign with a group of attorneys that successfully did the NFL CTE cases, the brain trauma cases.
Yeah.
And in exchange for that, and that's one of the things that Bravo, if you watch Bravo Films, he did like a 7-part documentary on Phil, and he left a ton of stuff out one of the things he left out was he tried to say that the family paid hundreds of thousands of dollars. There were people in Phil's family that did pony up some money, but the majority of it came from the firms because I ran the cases of guys like Milicic and his team and some other fight teams that I was close to. I ran those guys to sign, and they were hooking Phil up and still are, being in the safe side of Chorizo prison. So he's still in Chorizo. I mean, he could go into general population of Chorizo if they don't stop greasing him. Because everything in Mexico, I mean, you talk about the cartels being a true crime thing. Everything's all about the money and the payoffs with the cartels, man.
Yeah, if you got money, you're gonna live pretty good out there, right?
Oh God, I mean, they bring in hookers. You know, they drinking tequila. Phil was out smoking some weed with 2 hookers on his lap, singing "My Way" like karaoke, training guys and stuff. And he's just like a club madman. But Phil's a great guy and a great friend. But going back years, I mean, he had bad CTE, so he was the perfect patsy, man. I believe he was a patsy because I know a lot of things, and I listened to some calls with him out of the prison. I know he was a patsy and he didn't do it. And I know kind of like how he was set up. And the investigators that the firm had, 2 former Mexican DAs, they pretty much discovered what happened. But it doesn't matter. This is what I tell people about Mexico, man. It's not all margaritas and senoritas. It doesn't matter down there if you're innocent or guilty. It's all about the Benjamins, man. It's all about the pesos.
So if he has the right amount of money, would he be able to buy his freedom?
He could buy his way out, but the problem with that is they could really screw you. And the firm Garcia, that's very connected in Mexico, they're south of San Antonio. They're a big law firm. They presented that to the family, but they also presented that the big caveats, which is that a lot of times what happens is they set you up and they pick you up again, and you have no recourse. So
yeah, like they take the money and then you're shit out of luck and you're going back to prison.
They fuck you, man. They fuck you, and I mean, pretty much figured with Phil's case, where's he gonna go if he comes back here? He's got charges in New York, so. Right now, he's in a safe place, but it's a warning to people about going down to Mexico and kind of getting off the reservation or away from the resort, man. It can be pretty hairy down there, brother.
Do you want to explain like what happened with Phil for the people that don't know?
Sure. There's a woman who was murdered, and it was on New Year's Eve that it took place. And they were saying it was his girlfriend, but his girlfriend actually visits him, like within the chorizo. But it was a girl. But what happened in reality is there were multiple girls there. It was a part. It's kind of like, you ever see the movie Very Bad Things?
Yeah.
That's why I tell people, picture a party like Very Bad Thing, where everybody's partying. And Phil doesn't even speak the language. And they literally sent him out to go get beer. And when he came back, from what the investigator said, there were other guys that were in the room and left. And he came back and the woman was dead. Now, Phil was on the street, quite a bit. He used to collect money. He used to do home invasions. His father was a real crooked cop. NYPD Gold Star that kind of ratted in the whole Gotti Jr. thing and kept himself out of prison. But Phil comes back to the room and she's dead. But he freaked out and he went and got police. So the crazy part of that whole story was the police report was mainly manufactured because there were no interpreter. He doesn't speak Spanish. So they see this guy, this patsy that they think has money, or his family has money, that was a big time fighter at one point. And he represents himself as the perfect patsy, and that's when the extortion, begins and began. When they brought me on and we got Garcia and the other attorneys and started the whole CTE thing, they were already extorting him and the family. And I don't want to get into his personal family situation, but certain relatives that may have had some money. And the great thing that I was able to do with getting Garcia and getting those guys signed is they know there's the big bucks that come from the suit, and then also from all these other guys that I have signed, the fighters I have signed. So they front a lot of the money to keep them in a safe place. But there's no right to a speedy trial in Mexico. People have to forget what they know about the U.S. because it's not like you're waiting on a trial. They can keep you down there for years, several years, 10, 15, 20 years. And a lot of times what they do is they put you back in general population where, as an American that doesn't speak English, there's a ton of shankings and killings in those prisons. Those prisons are miserable places.
Yeah, they're dangerous down there. Do you know how much is it for somebody to be safe down there? Like if they're in prison, how much do they pay for someone's safety?
Well, one thing you have to consider there is the peso. It's very cheap to live in Mexico. So it's not like dollar for dollar. So your 10 grand is going to be worth 80, 90 grand. So it doesn't sound like a lot, like what they're paying, but they pay it over time. So it's more in the thousands and tens of thousands. It's not like Bravo said where it's hundreds of thousands to be in a safe place. It equates to that in Mexican money, but in American money, you're talking about, tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, so like a 20 grand would probably keep you safe for quite a while. Over some time.
Yeah, but then what they'll do is, like they did to Phil, they brought this hooker in, this pro in, and she gave him crack, and then they videotaped him acting all crazy, and then they re-extorted. So they're always playing the game. They're always trying to milk you. It's not a good situation to be in.
Doesn't sound it, man. Not at all.
Wait, I'll tell you the place I think to go now, man, is Peru. I have a buddy that's kind of like he was a cop here in Florida, in Tampa, and he kind of like he's an expat now, so he kind of half retires to Peru, and he's down there. I think it's called Manchua, the beach area, and in Peru, $1,000 a month, you're in the top 10% of financially, so you can live like a king down there.